Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have back on the show. She was on once before, Secretary of State of the great state of Michigan, Jocelyn Benson. She's got a new book out, The Purposeful Warrior, Standing Up for What's Right When the Stakes Are High. And she's also a candidate for governor, a Democratic candidate for governor in Michigan. Secretary Benson, nice to see you again. Thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Dean. Great to see you.
Sure. So let's talk. Congratulations on the book. It's part self-help book, part memoir. That's the way it's been described. I found it really compelling. Out of college, you go to college, you're in the Northeast area, and then you go to live in the Deep South. And you volunteer with Southern Poverty Law Center, which years ago, I did so much work with them, coming on my show. I did a documentary, interviewed a lot of people involved. And you did things going essentially undercover to interview white supremacists. What inspired you at that young age to want to do this?
I'm impatient and I don't like things that are unfair or unjust. And I like to root out those root causes and really kind of stand up for what's right. So is the sort of guttural thing that pulled me down there. But also I was really fascinated by the fact that this area of our country, the Deep South, whether it was in Selma or Montgomery or in Birmingham, Alabama, was the heart of the civil rights movement, in addition to being the heart of the Confederacy, and wanted to understand and really learn from the folks who had organized in the 60s and built this effort to, among other things, enact the Voting Rights Act. So that's where it started from. But where I found myself working for the Southern Poverty Law Center, I was thrown right into doing undercover work into the deep of sort of the depths of hate of organizing in around hateful acts, and saw firsthand also how that ideology, that hateful rhetoric and divisiveness can lead directly to hateful acts and worse. And so it in some ways prepared me for politics, but at the same time was a real strong sort of grounding in the need for us to stand up to hate, to be courageous, and to recognize hate in all the forms that it generates itself, not just in the South, but around our country.
I imagine on some level that had to make you, I'm not sure strong is the right word because I don't want to infer you were weak before, but doing something that daring, like to leave out your comfort zone, to go to a place you're dealing with people who peddle hate, that's their currency.
Yeah.
And dealing with them at a young age, not like now as adults, we're strong,
Yeah.
we've been through a lot. Was it challenging? I mean, just on a psychological, emotional point of view?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I have a visceral memory. I talk about this in the book of being alone in a hotel room in South Carolina at the age of like 20, wondering if these people I was investigating, who I'd spent all day kind of getting all this data, their membership lists and all the rest, if they were going to come and kill me and figure out who I was and what I was going to, I was going to hand this information over to the FBI. Were they going to kill me because of it? And so I was really scared in that moment and was thinking through, what am I going to do if they break down this door, if they come after me, right? And I thought, well, I could run and be afraid, or I could get to work. And I chose in that moment to lean into courage despite the fear and get to work. And out of that, wrote an article that ultimately exposed this organization and brought down their demise and actually stopped a lot of hateful acts from occurring. So I was able to find this sort of bravery muscle in that moment by choosing courage, and learned that if in moments great and small, when no one else is watching even, we choose to keep fighting, to keep going, to choose bravery over fear, that's how we actually become warriors for everything that we care about.
And that's how you become the purposeful warrior, which is the
Yeah,
dream.
yeah.
That's
And yeah, being in Alabama was also really helped me realize I wanted to be part of a broader fight too. I didn't want to just take down these domestic terrorist cells, but I wanted to work to ensure that every American has the opportunity to fulfill their potential. So, in Alabama, I saw up close the deep intergenerational poverty that holds so many people back as well. So for me, being there exposed me to not just the need to be courageous, but also how to make sure our government is a force for fairness and opportunity, and something that can give everyone a shot to succeed.
And it's interesting because you were, a professor, you're a policy nerd, as you write, and a teacher. And what inspired you to go from that? I know you share it in the book, but what inspired you to go from that to say, yeah, I'm going to run for office?
I think the chapter that I decide to run for office is called something like finding purpose in rage,
Right.
finding determining to find purpose out of rage, and using rage and anger over injustice as an opportunity to serve, frankly, and service as a path out of frustrating times. And so for me, running for office, I didn't want to be a politician. I wasn't really interested in politics per se, but I do believe strongly that that our country's been at its best when we have been and when we've had infrastructures, governments that give everyone a fair shot to succeed, protect fairness, protect and expand opportunity. And so I wanted to be part of a fight, and I think the political arena behooves that to make government work better for folks because I've seen firsthand through my parents' eyes as their special education teachers, and through my husband's eyes as a service member serving in the Army and as a combat veteran today, through my kids' eyes, I've seen so many ways that government can fail to stand up, fail people, and I wanted to make sure these institutions were instead being a force for fairness and for good. And the way that all crystallized for me in choosing to run for office and in running for Secretary of State was around the issue of democracy and making sure simply that everyone could vote and seeing other secretaries of state make decisions that were more partisan than professional. And I wanted to be a Secretary of State who would be professional, focused on lifting every voice, counting every vote. And indeed, that was exactly the type of Secretary of State we needed here in Michigan, given all that's unfolded over the last few years with Donald Trump.
Yeah, I never thought the defense of democracy would be as acutely needed as
Mm,
now. Like years ago, people would have said, I'm like, everything's fine. And, there's things around the edges. We don't like voter suppression, that kind of stuff, but not the whole
yeah.
idea of this republic and having self-determination as the people being at threat. And then, so that gets you were Secretary of State and, not known to us, I'm sure in Michigan known, but then Donald Trump made you known a little bit. And you talk about it in the book, how you woke up on May 20th, 2020, and you looked at your phone and Donald Trump's personally attacking you on social media.
Yeah.
So can you remind me, what was he whining and lying about at that time?
He was really upset that I had sent, well, he said that I, the rogue Secretary of State, had sent out ballots to everyone in our state, which wasn't true. And then he's threatened to deny federal funding to the entire state of Michigan as a result of this. And so I had to, take a beat and say, okay, the President of the United States is attacking me for something I didn't do, and threatening to withhold funding for our whole state as a result. It was very, it was an odd and also sort of terrifying moment. Again, fearful, right? But instead of just ducking or running away, I leaned in and I said, no, here's the truth, Mr. President. I simply sent out information to all of our residents on how to vote from home, which they have a legal right to do. And it's all the more important they know how to do that because we're in a pandemic right now and people are home. So I have a responsibility to make sure they know how to vote from home. And you know what? My colleagues in West Virginia and Georgia and Iowa, Ohio, all Republicans, they did the same thing. So I responded to him with truth and with clarity and with courage. And it became part of this broader theme that escalated throughout the election itself of being willing to stand up to even the most powerful person in the land if the truth and the law and democracy were on our side.
And I'm talking to Secretary of State for Michigan, Jocelyn Benson, about her new book, The Purposeful Warrior. Yes, and you answered by citing Republican Secretary of States and what they were doing in their own states, which was interesting when you mentioned West Virginia and I think Georgia at the time, and other states. So then we get to what we then all lived through. After the
Mm,
election, Donald Trump loses. He's not happy with losing, so he does something unlike any president. He literally tries to overturn the election.
mhm.
And that led for you in a very personal way. You even opened the book with it, with armed people, protesters around your house screaming, well, your family's there in the
Mm,
house, treason, and lock her up and stop the steal. Could you share a little bit? What was that like just on a human level?
mm. It was really terrifying, again, a theme, because here I am inside with my 4-year-old son trying to decorate our Christmas tree, and you have people shouting into bullhorns in the dark of night, "You're a murderer, lock her up, stop the steal," waking my neighbors, marching back and forth, approaching my yard. And for a good 45 minutes, all that stood between those protesters and my home and my family was one neighborhood security guard. That was it. it took a really long time for law enforcement to arrive. And in that time, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. Were they going to try to, attack my home? Were they going to breach the home, right? Are they going to kidnap me? Is something that, had been happening with the governor potentially a few months earlier. So it was really scary. But I also had a moment as I was calmly focused on taking care of my son and keeping him safe and feeling secure in that environment, in that noisy environment. I just stepped back and thought, is this what it means to defend democracy? And then I realized that indeed, throughout history, folks have marched into the breach to protect that basic power of one person, one vote, that basic ideal that the power of the people is always greater than the people in power. And if my job was to stand up against an armed mob to protect that principle, that ideal, the voices and the votes of the people of Michigan, I would proudly do it in that moment and in any other. So in that fury and that fear, I found that courage yet again. And I think it's a reminder that even though so much can happen out of our control, we always have the power to choose how we respond. And I chose to respond from a place of confidence, courage, with the knowledge that the law and that history was on my side.
You wrote how it was a chance to show the nation how we in Michigan respond to bullies. You don't
Yeah,
blink.
yeah.
And that's so vitally important, right? Because
Mhm.
anytime bullies, fascists, dictators, tyrants, any of them were cut from the same cloth, any kind of appeasement just emboldens them. If you
Yeah,
don't, if you
indeed.
don't step up, I mean, and there are people now trying to appease Donald Trump, and I'm like, hey, do you know nothing about history? This is the very worst thing you could do. You're making more unbearable for the rest of us to deal with. We should be united against this, and it's odd to speak of it that way. What we're
Mm.
living through now, it's a very surreal time living through this.
Yeah, and it's a time that calls on us all to be purposeful warriors, right? To be
Mhm.
actually to stand up for ourselves, for our country, for our families, for our loved ones. We are seeing this culture of corruption and cruelty and chaos and confusion around economic policies really percolate throughout an entire political party, but also throughout the presidency. And it's another reason to be both fearful and scared, but also resolute and determined to make sure that we, the people, define who our country is and who we will continue to be. My son, my 8-year-old son now, is in the kids he goes to school with are looking to us as the adults, literally in the room, to stand up for him, for his future, for the future of young kids all across this country that want and deserve leaders who will fight for them and fight for their safety and security and prosperity. So it's an opportunity in this moment for us to, and I think governors uniquely can do this, for us
Mhm.
to stand up to bullies unequivocally, but proudly, because we are on the side of truth, of history, of democracy, of all the things that truly make America great.
The in your book really is in a way helpful in concrete, tangible advice. Like you have a whole list of things about, you know, call out the bullies, channel anger into action, be
Hmm.
mission driven. I like never give up. That's really important. I think the
Hmm.
idea of people not being turned off or dissuaded from any more activism because there was one setback. When you go through like the era of civil rights, I tell people all the time, you know how many setbacks? Not only Martin Luther King being in prison numerous times, but actual murder of people, Medgar Evers and others. And if they go, well, that's it. This is just too hard for us. Who knows when the Civil Rights Act would have been passed and the Voting
Yeah.
Rights Act that followed? We don't know. Maybe one day, but we're always going to have obstacles. And I think it's how we deal with those obstacles that define us more than the obstacles that actually confront us.
I totally agree. Because I think even in challenging and uncertain moments, we always have the power to define who we are and decide how we will respond and what we're going to do to go through that moment. And so to me, one of the central pieces of this book and of my life is that every challenge, even every tumultuous time or dark time like this one, within that lies an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to find strength. That's been the story of our democracy. That's been the story of Michigan. That's been the story of my life throughout time. Challenging and tumultuous things will always come our way, but we can respond in a way that makes us stronger and better as a result of going through those times. And if we can master that skill, that technique of embracing challenge as an opportunity for growth and strength, there's nothing that can get in our way. And persevere perseverance, not giving up is key to making sure the blizzard, when it comes our way, is one that we walk through and emerge out of stronger than before. But it doesn't make it any easier, but it does give you a path through those challenging times with the knowledge and the optimism that you'll emerge on the other side better than before.
Is there one thing that fuels that passion you have in not giving up? And I say that because we've talked a lot about it, but I mean, for me, when I look back at my immigrant father coming to
Mm,
this country and my on my mom's side, my grandparents, but especially my dad, because I knew him, I didn't know my grandparents,
mm,
how would work 3 jobs a day, just to put food on the table, and worked in a kitchen 10, 12 hours a day and sweated. And the kind of person, takes the shower after work. I think about his sacrifices so much. And so I'm like, I have to persevere for him and I also believe it's a promise, with
yeah.
almost a covenant with the land. He came here for a better life because his
Mm.
nation meant something and democracies and freedoms. And he's passed, but I'm not going to let his memory fade by giving up to the wannabe tyrants and the aspiring fascists that we have in this country.
Yeah, I was talking to my son yesterday about how hard this is and how it's just, sometimes it's exhausting. We all have moments where we
Yep.
do want to slow down or rethink whether we should be in this fight. And my son said to me, "Mom, if you stop fighting, what's going to happen to me?" And
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, he's 8 years old. In 10 years, he's going to be 18. Everything we do over the next 10 years is going to define his childhood, his future, and the future of our loved ones, of all ages. So that's why I'm running for governor. That's why I'm in this fight, right? Because those who've come before us, they're watching us now to say, what are you going to do now that you're in this moment? And the kids, the children all around us are watching us too to say, what are you going to fight for, so that I have a future? And that's it. That's why we do this, and that's why we can also find pride, and a great sense of purpose in doing this work, because we know we are investing in the people we love and in their futures as well.
And that's great to hear. And a couple more things, and I'll let you go. I'm chatting with Secretary of State Michigan Jocelyn Benson about her new book, The Purposeful Warrior. There was something else you wrote in your book I really liked. It says, what sets a purposeful warrior is the passion
Mm,
apart. What sets apart a purposeful warrior is the passion to advance our mission beyond personal achievement. And it's the
mm.
idea we measure success by the legacy we create, and that we're making difference in other people's lives. And on some level, to me, that's what it means to be a Democrat. It might seem
Mm,
odd, but if
mhm.
you're a Democrat and you're an activist, I say on my show all the time, as a Democrat, it means I care about people I've not met and will never meet, but we still want a government and policy to help them. And that's about leaving a legacy of that. So where
Mm.
does who you are and your vision of what it means to be a Democrat, being your Democratic leader, do they intertwine, like with the purposeful warrior and being a Democrat? Is it a good lineup? Does it line up nicely?
I mean, I'm a Democrat because we're the party of the Voting Rights Act. We're the party that did the courageous thing, in response to the will of the people being clear, to make sure voices are heard out of the recognition that when all voices are at the table, we're all better off. And so I think investing in the middle class is an economic policy, investing in education, and the power that comes from education. My parents were special ed teachers. I saw firsthand how important it is that we have strong, well-funded educators, to train and prepare the next generation. I mean, that's who we are, not just as Democrats, but when we're at our best, I believe Americans. We care about each other. We believe everyone deserves a fair shot to succeed and an opportunity to be successful, to achieve their full potential. And we believe government should, save people time, save them money, make lives easier, and then get out of the way. So, to me, in this moment, there are people all across our state and country who are struggling to pay for childcare, struggling to pay for housing, struggling to know whether or not Medicaid's going to get cut or their health care is still going to be affordable in the future. In this moment, I believe the Democratic Party is sorely needed to step forward with a vision and say, we're going to make sure that you can have a fair shot to succeed, and that these concerns, these struggles, government's going to be on your side to help alleviate, not make worse.
And the last 2 things I want to just shift gears outside of the book. Again, the book's very good, The Purposeful Warrior, but you're running for governor. When you travel
Yeah.
around Michigan now, what are the big issues that voters are raising to you?
I think well, the cost of living is on everyone's minds,
Ah,
right?
yeah, sure.
And I think having a cost of living agenda for the state is really key and at the heart of what we'll be talking about in the months ahead. And it really, it focuses on three particular areas that all are to me about making Michigan the best place to be a kid, to raise a kid, and to call home. The first is support for our parents, child care support, access to good social services, wraparound services, so that kids can start off strong and have a great entry to life. Secondly, investing in our education system, also top of people's minds. I want to be and I want Michigan to be a state where we are, leading the country or in the top 10 in the country for strong public education opportunities. Affordable housing is top of mind for folks as well, to make sure that you can afford to buy a home in the community you want to live in, and that unnecessary regulations that drive up those costs are ameliorated, so that we can afford to buy homes in the communities we want to live in. It all goes around to just cost of living and affordability. And developing solutions to address and make childcare affordable, housing affordable, healthcare affordable, and then make sure no matter where someone chooses to work, they have opportunities to gain experience and grow our economy, whether it's in the auto industry or in the filmmaking industry or education or climate tech or everywhere in between. So strong economic development policy, investing in our people and making things more affordable are at the heart of what I hope to bring to the people of Michigan. And we're continuing to lay all of that out and invite more feedback to our vision at jocelynbenson.com.
It's a great vision. I can tell you, affordability was one of these under the radar issues until maybe the last year or so. And then I would talk to members of Congress and I'd say, what do constituents bring up that nobody's covering? Wherever they were, they'd say housing. Now it's top. After the candidates on from New Jersey were running for governor, housing. Mayor of New York City, housing. Deb Haaland from New Mexico running for governor, housing. Everyone is talking. It is the issue in this country. And I don't know, it is hard. It's got to, from a federal point of view and the state partnership, I guess the only way, and local partners for zoning issues to ensure you can have affordable housing that local communities are not going to block, because they don't want affordable housing sometimes. I grew up in those communities in Jersey where they did everything they could to block affordable housing.
Yeah, in Michigan, it costs $90,000 to build a home before you even put a brick in the ground, in terms of just regulations and
Wow.
additional bureaucracy and loopholes to jump through in order to build in our state. And so I think a lot of it is working actually with local communities to make building a house more affordable and therefore owning it as well. And then energy costs as well are on the rise in our state. I know elsewhere. So it's not enough to just be able to afford a home. You have to be able to heat it and live in it as well. Property taxes and the like are also causing people a lot of pain. So overall, it all gets back to affordability and addressing the cost of living in a state like ours, where particularly under this presidency, the cost of everything continue to rise and the wages are remaining stagnant. So as the next governor, that's what I want to take on and really address. And that's what I'm hearing also all around our state of what citizens are really looking for their leaders to solve right now.
And very last thing, you graduated from Harvard Law School. Donald Trump has made Harvard one of many schools. Some schools have given in, others it's been quieter. But look, you would be governor of Michigan. You have a lot of schools there. He threatened your state funding when you were Secretary of State. He literally threatened California funding today for not banning transgender people because he wants bigoted policy to be exported around the nation. So I can broaden out, not just Harvard. As governor, Donald Trump's going to threaten to take funding away from you if you don't bend the knee to him on every issue. What are you going to do?
I mean, look, I'm going to stand up for our economic prosperity, for academic freedom, for the safety of our residents, just like I've stood up and protected the rights and freedoms of our voters in Michigan throughout my time as Secretary of State. I'll always work with anyone who will help us improve the economic prosperity of our state, but I will take on anyone, no matter how powerful, who gets in the way.
That's great stuff. Well, Secretary Benson, again, her new book is The Purposeful Warrior, Standing Up for What's Right When the Stakes Are High. And you have a great track record of that. I wish you the best in the governor's race. And hopefully we'll chat in the future, just more about the governor's race and what's going on there.
I look forward to it. Take
Take care.
care.
Have a great day.